So I'd like to show you now how to create an app with ARKit that allows you to measure between 2 points. And what's going to make this one so special is that you get to actually select where these points are going to be. The user can tap a button. It's going to say, okay, at this particular point, that's the starting point, and at this point, that's the ending point. It'll tell you what the distance between the two are, and then you can, restart and select some new points. So let's go ahead and dive into this. Let's start a new Xcode project. So I'm going to say new Xcode project. I do want an augmented reality app. We're going to have to do some fixing with this, but that's okay. And just give it some sort of name. I'm going to call mine Measure Fun, and I'm going to use Scene Kit. That looks good. And I'm going to throw this on the desktop. Okay. So once we are here, let's go ahead and go to the storyboard and let me kind of convey my vision of what I want to have happen here. So I want to have a nice big button down here that says, set first point, and then when you tap it again, it says set second point, and then after you set the second point, it says like something like start over, and it'll sort of clear everything for you. And then there should be a label showing what that distance is, and then we have to have some sort of target here in the middle of the screen to show where the user's trying to set the point. So with this, let's go ahead and you'll notice with this view controller that it doesn't even have a straight, like a regular view inside of it. It just has the scene view that's taking up everything. So we actually want to delete that and then scroll all the way bottom to the bottom until you find the view. It's near the bottom, but go ahead and bring this out. We're going to have that take up the entire space of the view controller. Then within this view, now we're going to go back and just type SCN. We want to add this ARKit scene view, so we'll go ahead and put this in there. I'm going to say, guess what? View, you need to take up the entire screen, and we don't want any margins there, so we'll add those constraints. There we go, that looks good. And then now we want to be able to add our other items. So for example, I'm going to have a button here. I'm going to put this down towards the bottom, and you can kind of set up some stuff with the button here. For example, if you want to change, how the title is, or like the type that we've got here. There's all sorts of custom things that you can do. In fact, if we go to the custom button here, we can set the text color, and I actually think white might be our best bet with some shadow behind it. So I'm going to go ahead and have white text with the shadow, and let's go ahead and give this one some proper constraints. So we're going to have this some space towards the bottom, and I want it to be centered. Okay, so we'll go ahead and have that centered. Looks good. And the text on this button is going to change, but for now let's just have it say something like set starting point or something like that. Okay. Then above that, we want to have a label to display some information. So I'm going to put a label just above this, and this is where we're going to display how big something is. So that we might say something like that is 1.34 meters long, and we just want this to have some nice vertical spacing, and we also want it to be centered inside of the view controller, so we'll go ahead and do that. I think we should be consistent. Let's go ahead and change the color on this one so it's white as well. I think that looks pretty good. All right, so we have the button, we have the label here. We've got to have something in the middle that sort of shows where the user could place a point. So again, I'm going to get a view, and if you scroll down to the bottom, you can find a view. And we want this to be set, here we go, to the exact middle of the screen. So we're going to check both these boxes, but then we also want to say this should not be very big. So I might say something like 20 by 20, add those constraints, and now we get this nice white dot on the screen. Okay. So there you have it. We have that. I might change this color like to green, for example, because we really want it to show. So I'm going to change this background color to green. Let me see if I can just pick the standard green. There we go. And that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so now that we have all of this set up, we want to connect these things to our view controller. So I'm going to do a split screen here, and the first major thing that we should connect is that inside the provided view controller, that scene view is connected to the old scene view that we had. So I actually want to click and drag here to get it to connect with this new scene view that we have, and we can see that's all in place now. But we also want to bring over our other objects. So for example, this little green square that we have there, I'm going to have this called like the target view, for example. And so, oops. I'm trying to, this is so tiny, I'm gonna have to zoom in Just trying to grab a green spot here. So control drag. And I'm going to call this the target view. Okay, and we also need to bring over this label and button. So I'm going to do a control drag from the label, and I'm going to call this measurement label. All right, and then we're also going to bring over this button, and we're just going to call this the button because it's going to do many different things. And so, we want to know all about those. And then we also want to, be alerted when this button is tapped. So I'm going to do a control drag over here and bring it over as an action. Okay, and I'm going to call this just simply button tapped. And so then we can know what to do there. Okay, so we sort of have all the groundwork laid. Let's go back to our view controller here. So this is where we're going to add all the information for, when somebody works with this. And so, I mean, obviously there's a lot more here than we actually need in order to move this app forward, but that's okay. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to be able to add the functionality so that when a button is tapped, we can add a little square onto the screen marking that very first point. So let's work on that now. So our goal now is to add a little block into this 3D world of ours whenever somebody taps this button. So we're going to have to do a couple of things to get this working. And the first one is we're going to have to figure out where the user has touched on the screen. So we're going to make a new constant called user touch. And we're going to set this equal to the scene views center. Okay, so scene view.center gives us the user's touch. That's where, we've put that little green dot. If we go back to this screen, right, that's where that green dot is sort of aiming for. Okay, so once we have that in place, the next thing that we want to do is we want to figure out in sort of the AR world, like where this touch happened to be. So we're going to create a new constant called test results. So we're going to say let test results be equal to, we're going to access the scene view, and then we're going to get to its dot hit test, and we want to do the one that provides types here. So for the actual CG point, this is where we're going to pass forward that user touch. So we're saying, hey, they touched in the center screen, tell us where this happened in the AR world. And there's a couple of different options that you can have in here. I would really sort of play around with these, see what you get. But the one that we want to work with for now is feature point. Seems to be the one that gets us the most points. So we'll go ahead and use that. Now the next thing that we want to do is first make sure that there's, this test result actually has something inside of it. So we're going to try and get the first test result out of there. So we're going to say if let the result be equal to, and we're going to get access to this test results, which you can see is an array. And we're going to say, go ahead and give us your first item in there. And we're going to say that this thing should be coming through as, or actually, I don't even think we have to say that. I think if we just do the curly brackets here, that'll unwrap it for us. Okay. So now that we have the result, the next thing that we want to do is we want to create a block in the AR world. So what we're going to do is we're going to type out SCN, and we want to work with a box. Okay, so if we do initializer for this, you can see it's going to ask for some information about, how big do you want this thing. And so let's go ahead and do this. So for width, I might say, 0.5, height 0.5. I think this is going to be way too big, but let's just go ahead and test it. And then also for the radius, we'll just go ahead and do 0.5. Okay. So now that we've created this box, we're going to say let box be equal to this new box that we just created. Then we need to give it some sort of coloring on side of this, which is, we're going to call a material. So we're going to say let material be equal to a new SCN material. Okay. And once we have that in place, we're going to say material dot diffuse. Okay. And then we're going to say dot contents. And we're going to set this equal to some color. So I think since we have the green color there, we should do UI color dot green. And once we have this in place, we're going to take this box and we're going to say, hey box, your first material is going to be equal to this material that we just created. Okay. So this will get us our box so far. And you can notice we still haven't used the result yet. Don't worry, that's going to be coming here in time. So we next need to make a node. So we are going to say let box node be equal to a new SCN node, and we can do that where it asks for some geometry, which this box is definitely one of those. So we're going to go ahead and throw in the box right there, and once we've done that, the next thing that we need to do is give this box node a position. So this is where that result comes in. So we're going to say box node dot position, and we are going to set this equal to, and we want to create a new SCN vector 3. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do our open and closing parentheses there, and we want to use this result, and we're going to get a couple of points from it. So we're going to say the result dot world transform dot columns, okay, dot 3 dot x, and that gives us our x position that this should be inside of the 3D world. And we just want to do the same thing for x, y, and z. So we're going to paste this in for the x, now the y, and then finally the z position. Okay, and that's added now a position to this. And then the last thing that we need to do is we need to just put this into our world. So we're going to get access to our scene view. We're going to say scene view dot scene dot root node dot add child node, and then we're going to add this box node that we just created. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if this works. We're going to run this on our physical device. So in our app, we're going to have to go set a team, and then I'm going to have to change this to be my actual iOS device. So let me go ahead and run this now. All right, up opens the app, and you'll notice one thing that I forgot is we didn't get rid of the spaceship there, so that's going to be showing up. But you'll also notice if I go ahead and set some sort of starting point, if I want to measure how big my keyboard is, if I hit this button here, you'll notice we got one, but it was way too big like I had mentioned. So we want to go ahead and fix that. So let's go ahead and stop this. So there's a couple of things that we want to change here. The big one being that this box that we're making is way too big. So I'm going to make it 0.005, 0.005, 0.005, and 0.005. Okay. The other thing is we got to get rid of this spaceship. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this right here where we have that spaceship. So we'll just go ahead and delete that. And once we have this in place, let's go ahead and run this one more time and see what we get. All right, so we got this to show up one more time, and now we don't have a spaceship, which is nice. So I'm going to go ahead now and hit this button, and look at that. We get this cool little dot. It's more of a circle than a box, but then you can see, you know, we can add some here. And, you know, it's kind of best to sort of move around and let ARKit get its bearings. Like, you can see that very first dot, for example, like it's kind of up in the air, but, you know, this is closer to where that laptop actually is, and this one, you know, is there. So it's not perfect by any means. Let me try putting one by the shift key and then one over here. I mean, ultimately, I think that's what we'd want to measure, is something like the distance between those two. So it's kind of cool to see, you know, these little dots inside of the 3D world. So now the next thing that we've got to do is we kind of got to do a little bit of work on the user end to make, you know, the button change to say, you know, set starting point to then say set ending point, and then, you know, show the measurement and all that stuff. So let's do that now. So each time we add a box to our ARKit world, we want to make a note of it. So I'm going to scroll up to the top here, and I'm going to add some new properties to hold the first box and the second box. So I'm going to say var first box, I want you to be equal to, and we're going to have that be of type SCN node. And I think I can actually just do SCN node like this, and we're not going to have any issues. I'm going to say var second box. All right, this is going to be equal to an SCN node, and I'm actually realizing we probably want these to be optional so that we can determine, you know, at what point we are. So I'm actually going to change this to both be SCN node optionals. So I'll make that fix real quick there. All right, so we have this first box and the second box. So what we're going to do now is whenever this button is tapped and, you know, we are going to go add something here, we should sort of first check and see well, you know, is there something inside of the first one? So we're going to say if first box is equal to nil, then we want to go ahead and have all of this be equal to the first box, right? So let's go ahead and make a separate function called func add box, all right? And so we're going to go ahead and take all of this code here. Whoa, too much. Let's see, we're going to take all of this code here. So we're going to cut that and paste it here. And I want this add box to return whatever the node is. So I'm going to have this thing return an SCN node object. Okay, so at the very end of this, I'm going to say return box node, just like that. And if for some reason we weren't able to get into that if statement, we're just going to, maybe we should have it return an SCN node optional. And if we were unable to do that, then we'll say, well, we'll just go ahead and return nil because we weren't able to do it. All right. So if the first box is equal to nil, then what we want to do is say, all right, first box, you are going to be equal to add box. Okay. And go ahead on our merry way, and then we're going to do an else if second box is equal to nil. Well, in that case, we want to set the second box to be equal to, you know, add box, just like that. And then it's after this when we would want to do a calculation, right? Because it's like, hey, now that you have a second box, you can go and do you know, some sort of calculation to figure out what the distance is, and we'll come back and figure out what happens after somebody hits that last button. But let's go ahead and do a function to calculate the distance. So we're going to say func calc distance. All right, and we'll go ahead and run through the code that needs to happen here. So basically what we need to do is we need to do some math to figure out how these objects all relate to each other. And so what we need to do is we need to create something called a vector so that we can sort of find the distance between the two. And we're actually going to use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out the distance between these 2 points. So it's going to get a little bit mathy here, but I think you can handle it. So I'm going to say let vector be equal to an SCN vector 3 make. And so for the x, what we're going to do is we're going to take the second box dot position dot x, and then what we're going to do is subtract the first box dot position dot x. And I'm realizing both of these things are optional, so we want to unwrap those first. So I'm going to say if let first box be equal to first box, and if let second box be equal to second box. Okay, so that way we can not have any optional. So I'm going to paste that in there. So now we have second box dot position x minus first box dot position x, and we're basically going to do this for the x, the y, and the z. So I'm just going to put these in, and we just got to change this one to y minus y, and you know, z minus z. That all looks good. And that gives us our vector, and then this is where we do the Pythagorean theorem. So this is going to give us our distance. So we're going to say let distance be equal to, and we're going to do the square root of, and we're going to just multiply these two things. So we're just going to take vector dot x times vector dot x, and we're going to add this to the y's and the z's. So I'm going to copy, paste again. So now this will be, after we've done x and x, we'll do x and y, just like that. And then we'll do z and z. Then we got to get rid of our ending plus over there. But once we've done this, this gives us the actual distance. And then we can take this distance and go put it in our label up here, the measurement label. So we're going to go and say measurement label.text, you are equal to whatever, do our double quotes here. So whatever is inside of distance, it's measured in meters. So then we'll just put the m after that. Pretty cool stuff. And yeah, it all looks good. So this calc distance, we want to do this after somebody has added the second box there. And then what we want to do, and I guess we want to confirm in this situation that second box is not nil. So we're going to say if, we're just going to check one more time, second box is not equal to nil, then we'll go ahead and do that calculation. So if we walk through the logic of this if statement, it says if the first box is equal to nil, do this. If the second one's equal to nil, but if both of them are neither equal to nil, that means you probably want to restart. What we're going to do is we're going to have an else if, or we'll just have a straight up else here. And in this situation, we assume someone has hit the reset button and we want to get things back to normal. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that measurement label .text and just set that equal to an empty string. Then we're going to take the button and we're going to say set its title to be equal to set start point, and that's just for a normal state. Okay, I don't know why that's not giving me the dot. There it is, dot normal. All right, we also should be setting these things earlier. So in fact, on the view did load, I'm going to make sure that measurement label is set equal to this. Great. And also if someone, as part of resetting, we need to set first box and second box equal to nil. So I'm going to say first box is equal to nil. Oh, not Bill, nil. So first box equal to nil, and second box is also equal to nil. So we've got those things in place. We also need to do a little bit of logic here for the button. So if someone goes ahead and sets the first box, then we're going to say, set ending or set endpoint. That's going to be a good one. And then inside of here, what we're going to do is we're going to say reset. So that's going to be the situation where we want everything to sort of start over. And again, we only want this button to change if first box is not equal to nil. If for some reason we weren't able to add that point, we want to know about it and do something there. So I think we have all the code that we need. It's looking pretty good here. Let's go ahead and run it on our device and see what happens. All right, here comes our app. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to kind of move around in ARKit, let it get its bearings straight here. If I'm going to try to identify how long these keys are. So I'm going to set my starting point here. And that was pretty accurate, not great. And then I'm going to go ahead and put it says set my endpoint. So I'm going to put one there. And look at that. It says the distance between those 2 points is 0.256. So let's try, hit the reset button. So it doesn't get rid of those nodes. That's definitely something we want to fix. But let's go really tiny here. If I just, go between 2 keys, for example, look at that, 0.3. So we know that that's working. So really just the last bit of polish that I want to do here is I want to make it so that when someone, has hit reset, that we also get those nodes existing or previous nodes out of the scene there. All right, so the last thing that we want to do is just that situation, right, where we're sort of resetting everything. Before we set the first box and the second box equal to nil, we want to remove those. So we're going to say first box dot remove from parent node, and then we also want to say second box dot remove from parent node. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this and make sure it's exactly what we're looking for. I also remembered one thing that's going to really help us here, and that's if we scroll down to where the configuration is happening. Where is that configuration happening? Oh, excuse me for a second here. There we go. So in the view will appear if we go to our configuration and say dot plane detection and set this equal to dot horizontal. We assume vertical will come at some point, but this is going to really help with those dots kind of showing up in a more sure place. So let's go ahead and run this on the device. That was something as I was going through, I was like, man, I wonder why those dots maybe weren't exactly perfect. And I don't know how much better it's going to make it, but I know that's definitely going to be helping things. So here comes our app, and let's go ahead and set our starting point here. Okay, so we've got that. I'll move over to the other side of the keyboard, set there, boom, 0.26. Now when I hit reset, oh, look at that, they disappear, it's perfect. So again, let's do kind of a really short space here. Well, it actually, You can see it's not perfect with this stuff, but you know, still, it's pretty good. So let me try doing some really close-up stuff there. Yeah, that's kind of a small distance. Okay, well, congratulations. I hope you enjoyed making this a little bonus stuff here with ARKit. I think this is really cool what Apple's created. So anyways, let's keep moving forward.